Sign here, or I'll destroy you right here. My mom, Marlene, said it right at the dinner table, in front of more than 30 people already seated like they were waiting for a verdict. She sat there, completely calm, and I had just gotten off my shift. My name tag still stuck to my shirt. One look from my mom and the whole room understood. Tonight, I was the one who had to be wrong. All because I asked about my grandma's will. One question. My mom immediately shoved the paper toward me. Sign it to keep things smooth, don't make noise. The whole room went quiet, the kind of quiet in this house that always means, let it happen. My eyes slid down the page and stopped. A strange line, not my handwriting, not even the way my grandma used to write my name. My mom had already edited it. She was just waiting for my signature. In that moment, I wondered, if I signed just to buy peace right now, wouldn't that mean I was crossing my own name out of my life for good? That was the beginning of Ava Sinclair's escape. If you've ever been turned into the guilty one, with nothing but a piece of paper and a room full of people like Ava, leave a comment and tell Stella where you are and what time it is. Hit like, subscribe, and stay to the end. Because the next morning, Ava disappears from the house, and the person who rings the doorbell brings something that makes Marlene manage only one question. Where did you get that? The dinner table was set up like a family legacy dinner my mom loved. Warm yellow lighting, a perfectly flat tablecloth, sliced turkey already laid out, wine poured exactly halfway. The older relatives sat up straight like everyone had to act proper because they were all together. My mom, Marlene, sat in the middle, neat dress, light perfume. Her voice was soft, just loud enough to hear, the kind of voice that makes people uncomfortable about disagreeing. The paper sat right in front of me. The pen she pushed forward tapped lightly at the signature line like it was keeping time. Sign. No one had to say a word. I could feel what the room was pressing onto me. Don't make your mother look bad in front of everyone. I bent down and read the fine print. One line made my hands go cold, a statement waiving inheritance rights. Right underneath, consent to change the beneficiary. The confirmation box was already marked. My name had been written slightly wrong on purpose, just different enough for someone to claim later. That's not Ava. I lifted the pen and set it back down. No drama, just enough for my mom to know I'd read it. Do you want me to sign? Right in front of everyone? I said quietly. A few eyes shifted. No one spoke. Marlene kept smiling. The smile of someone who believes the crowd is behind her. Don't make a big deal out of it, she said, still in that keeping the peace voice. Sign so it stays smooth. Okay, I answered. One word. Then I walked upstairs, obedient in a way that felt suspicious. The door clicked shut, the bottom drawer slid open. A brass key sat in my hand, the blue ribbon at the edge worn thin. My grandma's voice rose in my head, like a gentle, certain command. Don't argue. Open the door. My phone screen lit up. I found the name in my contacts from the day of the funeral that I'd never dared to tap. Nora D. Trust. The text was one line, cold and clear. Tomorrow morning, 7:15 a.m. Bring the sealed envelope plus the recording. The screen went dark after I sent it. I shoved the key into my coat pocket and zipped it up. Downstairs, there was still laughter and clinking glasses, like no one had just put a piece of paper on the table to erase me. Marlene kept that keeping the peace smile, but her hand pushed the pen right up to the edge of the paper, like she was closing a deal. She didn't need to raise her voice, she just needed the rhythm. Every time I hesitated, the pen tip tapped the signature line. Tap, tap, like it was reminding the whole room this should wrap up neatly. That kind of calm wasn't new. It was exactly like when my grandma died. Mom didn't cry much. She just stayed busy finalizing paperwork, speaking quietly but decisively on the phone. And tonight she used that same calm to turn me into the troublemaker if I didn't sign. She put "for your own good" on her lips, but the fine print on the page was ice. Giving up inheritance rights, then agreeing to change the beneficiary. One afternoon, I stopped by my mom's house to pick up a few of my grandma's things. Marlene was at the table with her laptop open. I was just walking past, but I caught a subject line, bright like headlights. Beneficiary change request / Ava consent. She snapped the laptop shut. Don't touch my stuff, she said, still sweet, but her eyes were cold. That night back home, I didn't call and ask questions. I did something small. I turned on silent screenshots, saved what I'd seen, sent it to a backup email, added the time, added the date, added one note, subject. Then I shut my phone off and washed my glass like it was a normal night, because I knew if I made a scene, my mom would get exactly what she wanted. Ava is causing drama. The next week, at a family meal, Marlene smiled and said it like advice. A good daughter is a daughter who knows how to stay quiet. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. But the sentence stuck like a pin. In this house, quiet isn't polite. Quiet is surrender. Now I'd seen the waiver statement. I'd seen the request to change the air, and I'd just sent a text. 7:15. The question left was simple. When did my mom submit that request? And what exactly did she need my signature to make official tonight? Downstairs, the laughter kept moving like nothing had happened. Chairs scraped. Someone asked for more wine. Then a line popped out, light like a joke. Tomorrow, we sign and it's done. Another voice replied, yeah, don't let Ava mess it up again. My name got tossed around the table like a side dish anyone could shove aside. Upstairs, the light stayed off. Hallway light spilled in just enough to show my work name tag still stuck to my coat. The plastic badge came off and landed on the desk. Ava Sinclair, in clean black letters. Proof that outside this house there was another life, a life that didn't need permission. 2 knocks at the door, not hard, but in that familiar command rhythm. Ava? Marlene's voice slipped through the crack. Tomorrow you come down, you apologize, and you sign. Don't embarrass me. Same old line, except this time there was waiver downstairs and more than 30 witnesses as backup. The door didn't open right away. A beat of silence long enough to hear the fridge hum at the end of the hall. I heard you? My reply fell out short. I just want things to stay smooth, she said, still soft, like she was reminding me to take medicine on time. If you do it right, everyone's happy. A memory flashed like a spark. 17 years old, standing in the kitchen, hands still wet with dish soap. Mom pulled me in front of Aunt Ruth and made me apologize for talking back. I apologized, and still didn't even know what I'd done wrong. I just remember my face burning and the adult look that said, you're just a kid. Same thing now, except apology had been turned into a signature. Waiver, consent to change beneficiary. The box already marked, the name written wrong. If I signed, tomorrow they'd say one sentence. She agreed. And forcing would turn into a deal, and I'd turn into the person who erased herself. The door opened a crack. Marlene stood there. Nice dress, hair neat, face calm like she was guarding the family's image. Her eyes swept the room like she was checking whether I was planning to cause trouble. Don't disappoint me, she said. I'll come down tomorrow. Even tone. No extra words. Marlene nodded like she'd just stamped another form. She walked away. Her steps faded down the stairs. The door shut. My hand touched the key in my coat pocket, cold and solid. The name tag sat on the desk like a reminder. They don't need me to argue. They need me to take the blame. The drawer opened. The name tag got shoved deep inside, next to a small bag already packed. ID, phone charger, 1 clean change of clothes. Not much. Enough to leave before dawn. The key went back to the exact spot in my pocket where my hand could find it without thinking. That night, the defendant role didn't fit anymore. The stage belonged to Marlene, and tomorrow I'd come back with something no one in that house could laugh off. 4:30 a.m. The house was still dark. The small bag went over my shoulder. The key sat in my coat pocket. The back door closed so softly no one in the living room could hear it. No goodbye, no text. In this house, explaining yourself is just handing someone else the chance to tell your story for you. Leaving a place that used to be called home is never easy, but sometimes it's the only way to save yourself. If you think Ava acted decisively and did the right thing, give her a like as a little encouragement. We're about to see what secret Ava brings back, right after this. The Civic rolled onto the road. Cedar Ridge was still asleep, traffic lights blinking yellow. For one beat, the urge to turn back flashed. An old habit. Don't make Mom's life harder. Then the word waiver lit up in my head like a road sign. That wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a plan. 7 a.m. A thick folder of solid proof was sitting in my hands. Screenshots, timestamps, printed pages, all stacked in the right order. My phone kept buzzing, Marlene calling over and over. I didn't pick up. Today I didn't need to explain. I needed her to face it. 7:15 a.m., the cafe door chimed. Nora walked in, heavy coat, hair tied back, the look of someone used to paperwork more than drama. No small talk. She set the bag on the table like it belonged there. Inside was a cream-colored sealed envelope, neatly closed with a red notary stamp standing out. A small USB labeled in handwriting. Dorothy, voicemail. and a printed timeline, dates and times of the notarized appointment, who scheduled it, the phone number, short but sharp. Dorothy told me, Nora said. Only hand this over if you're being forced to sign consent. Or a waiver. My finger touched the red stamp. This was something Marlene couldn't twist with a keeping the peace voice. Nora looked straight at me. No pity, no hype. Just one sentence like a deadbolt. Dorothy wasn't afraid you were weak. She was afraid you'd believe Marlene's version. The truth is the only weapon Ava has right now. Are you ready to see Marlene's face when her whole plan gets exposed? Comment, watch, if you want Stella to tell the rest of this suffocating showdown right now. Some people steal by telling the story first, but some things don't listen to stories. They only listen to timestamps and seals. The sealed envelope sat in my coat pocket like a chunk of ice. Near noon, I came back to Cedar Ridge, and my mom's house was even more crowded than usual. I parked a little ways away. My phone kept buzzing, messages like, "Your mom is looking for you," missed calls from Marlene. I turned the sound off. Today she wanted an audience. Fine, she'd have one. I went in through the side, into the kitchen first, chairs scraping, voices carrying from the living room. The coffee table was already set with papers and pens like a second signing session. Marlene stood in the middle, neat dress, gentle voice. Make yourselves comfortable. When she saw me, she smiled, smiling for the witnesses. You're back. No long answer. I set the sealed envelope down in the center of the table, the red stamp facing up, not opened, just placed there. Then I turned to Aunt Ruth by the window. Stay right here with me for a second. She looked at the stamp and gave a small nod. Uncle Frank stood nearby, coffee still in hand, not going anywhere. The room cooled instantly. Side conversations died. Marlene stepped forward, then stopped like she'd hit something invisible, her eyes locked on the stamp. The doorbell rang. Nora stood on the porch, thin file bag in her hand. Marlene opened the door, ready to say something polite, but Nora only introduced herself. Simple. Nora Hensley. Marlene's eyes flicked straight to the table, to the sealed envelope, like she was confirming it had reached the right place. Marlene saw the stamp. Her face tightened. One beat. Then the line snapped out, so blunt the whole room froze. Where did you get that? Dead silence. I didn't answer right away. I just turned the envelope so the red stamp caught the light and everyone could see it. This, my voice low, isn't something you can make? Nora stood still like a marker. I opened the envelope. Inside was Dorothy's instruction letter and a notarized copy. The first line was enough to steal the air from the room. No one is allowed to force Ava to sign any waiver/consent to give up beneficiary rights. Any change to the beneficiary must go through independent verification. No handling it at a family dinner. Marlene opened her mouth, then shut it. The smile she tried to rebuild wouldn't hold. I set the paper down, perfectly aligned with the pen my mom had shoved at me the night before. Then I looked up and asked one simple question, not dodging. So, when did you submit that beneficiary change request? Right as the question landed, my phone buzzed in my coat pocket, like the timing was meant to kill anything that could still be called a feeling. I pulled it out in front of everyone. A new email, the subject matching the request I'd sent that morning. The sender was the trust office managing Dorothy's account. I opened it. I didn't read the whole thing, just went straight to the part that mattered, then handed the screen to Aunt Ruth first so she could see the clean lines of text weren't coming from me. Dear Ms. Sinclair. The first line confirmed identity. The second made everyone's stomach drop. The trust holds $487,000, intact, not distributed. The next line was what turned the room cold. A request to change beneficiary is currently pending. Marlene stood perfectly still. Her eyes weren't on me anymore. They were on the screen like something had surfaced that shouldn't exist. I read the next part slower, so every word reached everyone. The request said unable to locate beneficiary and cited financial instability. Clean phrases. Exactly the kind of language Marlene uses when she wants to make someone sound unreliable without ever raising her voice. The proposed beneficiary line sat right underneath. Not my name. It was the Family Reserve Fund, a family fund Marlene controlled, and the name that made a few relatives turn and look at each other. Dylan Sinclair, the golden child. The one always called stable, reliable, the right choice. I heard Uncle Frank make a small sound in his throat, like he swallowed a sentence. I looked straight at Marlene. My voice didn't rise. It didn't shake. Unable to locate, I repeated so everyone could hear it. Last night I slept upstairs. This morning you knocked on my door and told me to come down and apologize. And you wrote that you couldn't find me? The last words landed softly but sharp. They didn't need anything extra. Marlene opened her mouth like she was about to say, "I'm doing this for you," but the words got stuck because the email didn't leave her any room to perform. It gave her only one option: explain why she lied. I turned to the whole room and let the question pass across every face. Do you want this family to believe the paperwork or the truth you all just witnessed? It was the first time I wasn't speaking to my mother. I was speaking to the crowd, the same crowd that had always helped her win. That feeling, when the truth beats a lie, always makes you breathe a little easier. Stella believes everyone needs at least one moment in their life where they're brave enough to protect their boundaries the way Ava did. If you think this story could give strength to a friend or a family member, don't hesitate to hit the share button and send this video to them. Now, let's watch what Marlene does when her keeping the peace mask finally collapses. Aunt Ruth set her glass down. A small clink, but everyone heard it. "Richard," she called the wrong name and corrected herself. "Marlene, this isn't okay." Another aunt frowned. Uncle Frank shook his head. Small reactions, no one yelling, but enough for Marlene to lose the thing she relied on most, that keeping the peace cover. Nora stood near the coffee table, her finger tapping lightly on the timeline inside her folder. "There's one more thing," she said, still calm. "The notary appointment." She pointed to a single line. The notary appointment had been scheduled 48 hours before Dorothy died, and the person who scheduled it was Marlene. The room went quiet again, but this time it wasn't the kind of quiet that means, "Let it happen." It was quiet because everyone understood. Last night's waiver wasn't a sudden impulse. It was the final step of a plan that had been moving long before Dorothy even closed her eyes. No one asked anything else. Everyone's gaze drifted down the hallway toward Dorothy's old office, the door Marlene always kept locked, the door she never let anyone touch, with the same familiar line, "Leave the dead alone." The brass key came out of my coat pocket. The blue ribbon was worn thin at the edges. Aunt Ruth stood up first, Nora right behind her. I didn't go in alone. The two of them stood right at the doorway to see everything from the start, so no one could say this was staged. The old lock made a small click when the key turned. Lid labeled in handwriting, "Ava, when you lid labeled in handwriting, Ava, when you need proof." The tin box was set on the desk and opened. Inside was a thin notebook listing appointments. Every page had dates, times, and the name of the person who scheduled them. I flipped through a few pages fast. The name kept showing up without needing any explanation. Marlene. One entry even said notary appointment, scheduled before Dorothy died. Under the notebook was an envelope clipped to notarized copies, paperwork for a small property, a cabin by a lake in western Ohio where Dorothy used to take me in the summers. Not something to show off, but the recipient name was clear, Ava Sinclair. Pale, like someone watching a door. They'd pale, like someone watching a door they'd kept locked for over a decade, open at the exact moment there were witnesses. There was also an old photo in the box. Me and Dorothy in front of the cabin, her hand holding a bundle of lavender tied with that same blue ribbon. I held the photo up and turned to Aunt Ruth and Nora. "She didn't leave a promise," I said, low and clean. "She left an exit." Revenge isn't always about smashing things. Sometimes it's just opening one door, so everyone can see what's been hidden. And once that door is open, Marlene doesn't get to tell the story first anymore. The office door closed, but it felt like the whole house had been flooded with light. There was no space left to keep things smooth. The tin box was still open on the desk, the appointment notebook still there, Marlene's name still visible, like it had just been written. I didn't stand around waiting for my mother to switch tactics. The pen and the signing session papers were still in the living room, so we ended it right there. I put my phone on speaker. It rang. 1 beat, 2 beats. The whole room went silent. Marlene stood frozen, her face stiff like a mask that had just cracked. Bringing an outsider into the house was the biggest taboo in a family that lives on covering things up. But this wasn't family business anymore. This was paperwork. And paperwork doesn't care about glares. "Trust Management Division, this is Patricia." A middle-aged woman's voice came through clearly. Polite, very American. "My name is Ava Sinclair," I said, slow and clean. "I need to request a freeze on any changes related to the trust account in Dorothy Sinclair's name. There's currently a pending request to change the beneficiary, and there are signs of coercion to sign a waiver, along with a false, unable to locate claim. Aunt Ruth tapped the table once, like support and sound. Nora stood beside me and handed me the sealed envelope and the USB. I'm sending supporting documents right now, I continued. A sealed envelope with a notary stamp, Dorothy's instruction letter, a voicemail recording, and a timeline of the notary appointment. Understood, Mrs. Sinclair, Patricia replied. I will immediately log your freeze request and open a review file. Please email the documents within 10 minutes to the address I'm about to read. I opened Uncle Frank's laptop right on the table, pulled a chair in, and logged into my backup email. The scanned files were ready. I attached photos of the waiver, the email confirming $487,000, the instruction letter, the timeline, and a short voicemail clip. I hit send right in front of everyone. No arguing, no begging. Marlene snapped back in her familiar voice. You're destroying this family. You're ungrateful. You want to humiliate your mother in front of everyone? She tried to pull the words over the room like a curtain. I didn't pull back. I turned to her and said one sentence. Withdraw the request and sign that unable to locate was false. I set the pen on the table and slid it toward her. This time the pen wasn't in my hand. Dylan had been standing by the liquor cabinet, tense. Then he let it slip, half under his breath, half angry. Mom said once she signs today, the money comes in. The words dropped like a glass shattering. A few relatives looked at Dylan, then at Marlene. Keeping the peace suddenly sounded like a bad joke. On speaker, Patricia continued in the same even tone. Ms. Sinclair, I'm confirming we have placed a temporary freeze and will require the person who submitted the request to provide a written explanation. You will receive instructions by email today. Thank you, I said, and ended the call. No one clapped. But the room had shifted. Marlene stood there without a stage, just choices. And for the first time, those choices weren't in her hands. After the call, the living room stayed frozen, like it was being held in midair. Marlene stared at the pen on the table, the same pen she'd used to force me the night before, now sitting there like it had betrayed her. Dylan avoided everyone's eyes. Aunt Ruth didn't sit down. She stood straight, hands folded, the posture of someone who'd been holding it in for too long. I didn't circle around. Nora's timeline was pulled out and set beside the freeze confirmation email. My finger landed on the notary appointment line, date and time clear, exactly 48 hours before Dorothy died. Why did you schedule that notary appointment? I asked. Were you planning to sign for her, or redirect something before she died? Marlene went silent for a beat longer than usual. The smile was gone. She looked straight at me, voice low and solid. I did it so this family wouldn't fall apart in your hands. But every word hit the wall of what was sitting on that table. The waiver. Unable to locate. And that red notary seal. Claiming you couldn't find me while I was sleeping in your house? I didn't say it again. That line had already been said. I just let the silence push it onto everyone's face. I picked the pen up. Not to sign, to put it down. I set the pen on the table very slowly. The tip trembled for one small beat before it finally went still. The plastic hitting wood was quiet, but the whole room heard it. Aunt Ruth held her breath, her hand tightening around the rim of her glass. I looked straight at my mother, and the question came out like a clean line, unpolished. Do you want me to be your daughter? Or my signature? Marlene's mouth twitched like she was about to smile it off. She couldn't. She looked around, at Aunt Ruth, at Uncle Frank, at the relatives who wouldn't meet her eyes because they didn't know where to stand. And right when she thought I'd back down like always, the truth snapped out, raw and blunt. I'm not letting that fall into the hands of some kid who doesn't deserve it. No one breathed. Dylan's head jerked up. Aunt Ruth looked like she'd been slapped. In 1 second, the Keeping the Peace Act vanished, and only the truth remained. This was never about protecting me. This was ownership. It's bitter when the truth finally breaks through. If you were in this room right now, would you feel more angry or more heartbroken for Ava? Leave one word in the comments and share it with Stella. I turned to the whole room. No yelling, no shaking voice. Did everyone hear that? The question didn't need an answer. It just needed to sit there, in the middle of the same people who used to stay quiet and let it happen. Aunt Ruth stepped forward 1 step. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut clean. Say it here. Don't pull her into another room. Stop performing. Marlene tried to react, and then she stalled. Every path she usually used, tears, blame, don't embarrass me, was blocked by witnesses and paperwork. She stood in the middle of her own living room like she'd lost her footing. Silence fell. For the first time in my life, it didn't press down on me. It pressed down on Marlene, and I didn't have to keep things smooth for her anymore. 3 weeks later, an official email from Trust Management arrived on an ordinary morning. No background music, no witnesses, just one clean, cold confirmation. I was the legitimate beneficiary. The beneficiary change request was canceled, and the file noted that submitting unable to locate and attempting to coerce a waiver violated procedure. The trust remained intact. $487,000 doesn't automatically make anyone a better person, but it did one important thing. It gave me back the right not to be erased at a dinner table. I didn't publicly take down Marlene. I didn't need to. She lost the thing she lived on, people's trust. Aunt Ruth stopped dropping by my mom's house like before. Uncle Frank stopped laughing things off. Some relatives chose silence and stayed out of it, not because they believed my mom, but because they were afraid of the mess. That was the cost. Losing the illusion that if I was just careful, I could keep a family whole. I hung the brass key on a hook by the door. Metal tapped metal softly in the empty room. Cold and final. A simple reminder. My life doesn't need anyone's permission. Grandma didn't leave me money. She left me the echo of freedom. For years, I stayed quiet to keep things smooth, thinking silence was maturity. Now I know smooth isn't love if it requires me to disappear. A week later, an envelope with no return address sat outside the cabin door. The handwriting was Marlene's. Inside were only a few lines, the last word slightly shaky. I didn't know how to be a mother any other way. The paper still carried a faint trace of her familiar perfume, the scent I'd spent years believing was love, only to realize it was control. Not a full apology, not enough to heal, but it was the first time she wrote something true without sugarcoating it. I folded it and placed it in a drawer. The door stayed open, but not the way it used to. I'm not declaring who's right and who's wrong. I only know this. Boundaries don't need speeches. They need action. Once, at the right moment, clear enough that no one can rewrite your story for you. And as always, the narrator wants to say this gently. The story you just heard is fictional, inspired by real-life situations. The content is supported by AI and edited by humans to encourage reflection, and it's not meant to encourage anyone to copy what happens in the story. If one thing stays with you, maybe it's this. Sometimes an inheritance isn't money. It's that someone prepared so you couldn't be erased, and you were brave enough to open the right door at the right time. Before you leave, Stella wants to ask, what state are you listening from, and what time is it where you are right now? Leave a comment, just one line is enough, so I know you're still here. If this story hit you, tap like and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel reach people who need stories like this. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Thank you for staying to the end. Your time matters. And if you want another story right now, the next video is waiting for you there.